Hello, Lisa here, and welcome back to my channel. Welcome back to Self-Worth Saturday. This will be attempt number 3 at starting this video, but I have a dog who decided she was going to build a nest in the carpet a lot. But I think she's settled down now. So with that, let's dive into it. So if you are new to this series, let me give you the rundown. Self-Care Saturday is a weekly series where I like to share about a topic related to self-care, about self-worth. And these topics are typically voted on by members of the Supportive Tarot Facebook group. So I keep an ongoing poll going in the group, and each week or thereabouts, when I'm getting ready to do the next video, I check and see which topic has the most votes. And this week the winner was social media self-care. So if that is a topic that you are interested in, then definitely stick around. We're gonna get right into this. So I should point out that I always have notes for this series, so if you occasionally see me looking down, it's at my extensive notes, which for whatever reason this time are, well, not for whatever reason, I had issues with my digital note-taking, and it's handwritten. Also, welcome to my babbling, because that is also a part of being on my channel, so enjoy. In any case, I'm gonna dive right into this, but first let's kind of talk about what social media self-care is. So we've talked a bit about self-care, and I will link that video up in the information, what do you call that? The cards, so that you can take a look at that previous topic if you are so inclined. But for now, self-care is essentially the way that we care for and nurture ourselves. That includes things like our boundaries, the things that make us feel nourished and healthy. This can be basics, like in our actual life, from making sure that we eat and drink enough water, bathing and showering, to doing the extra things that make us feel nurtured and whole and like our cup is full. So when we're approaching social media, why is it important to practice self-care? The answer to that is pretty simple. We all go to social media for different reasons. And we go to different social media platforms for different reasons. And oh my gosh, Shayla is currently curled up literally at the base of the tripod. So we're just like a hair or a doggy breath or scratch away from a complete disaster. Fair warning. So the thing is, let me get back on topic. We all go to social media for different things. I go to Pinterest for one type of interaction and feeling, and I go to Facebook for something different and YouTube for something different. And I think it's important to be aware that if we're not getting back what we're going to that social media outlet or platform for, then something's probably missing in the social media self-care department. If you're going to Facebook, for example, to connect with family, but find yourself getting sucked into the vortex of the Facebook marketplace and shopping, maybe you want to dial that in, right? So this is kind of a general idea of where we're going to be going with this. There's a lot more layers, there's a lot to cover, a lot of ground. We're going to see how we do. But that is going to give you an idea of what we're doing to approach this topic. We're talking about what are we getting out of the social media platforms that we're going to, and is that in line with what we initially went to them for? Did anybody follow that? So this is important because we want to be in a place where we're getting our needs met from our social media interaction without getting caught up in a lot of obligation and a lot of additional burden and work that we maybe didn't sign up for. I think it's also important to point out that some of us are going to social media exclusively on a personal level. Some of us are running businesses, some of us need to do marketing, some of us have to do social media interaction for our jobs. And I think these all have different layers and nuances. So I'm framing this discussion around going to social media mostly for personal reasons. But I think that essentially social media self-care, as I'm identifying it here, is the ways that we engage in social media that fill our cup instead of empty it, that make us feel whole and nurtured and nourished and not depleted and dragged down and bummed out. And I think that's a hard balance to strike sometimes with social media. So let's first talk about how to engage with social media in a self-care way. And I think the first thing is to decide what it is you want to get out of that particular platform. So, for example, you might go to a particular social media platform to learn. A lot of us start out on YouTube because we're trying to learn as far as watching goes. I first came to YouTube because I wanted to learn how to do makeup, and I got really drawn into the makeup YouTube community. And here's an example of how where we want to go with a particular social media platform can kind of go a little sideways if we're not mindful. For me, I got drawn into the makeup world because I wanted to learn how to do makeup. But very quickly, I kind of moved my content watching from tutorials and application techniques to product reviews. And while that was really fun, at a certain point I realized I wasn't learning anymore. I was just engaging with the platform in a way that was feeding that need and that desire. Need is the wrong word. That desire to have more and expand my makeup collection and all these kinds of things. And we can end up going down a bit of a rabbit hole, or at least I can. And so for me, what I learned was that if what I want to do here in the makeup YouTube community is learn how to do makeup, then I need to curate the content that I'm watching to be in line with that goal. And so that is an example of being clear about what you're on that platform to do, and then curating your activity on that platform to line up with your goals. If, for example, you're on a depth year, and that's something that a lot of people in the TarotTube community are doing this year. I started one and hopped right off of it, full disclosure. But if you are on a depth year, if that's something that's actually really important to you, then maybe your content that you're watching right now, you want to curate to watching the content that the creators you enjoy are putting out that supports those depth year goals. Maybe putting a hold on watching the deck reviews and the walkthroughs and instead focus on the other content that your favorite creators are making. That's one way you can practice social media self-care right here on YouTube. Something else might be unfollowing accounts that just don't line up with your goals. You know what I mean? If you're one of your favorite curators right now, let's use the depth year example because that's a good relatable one, I think, for some of us. If I, for example, only ever did unboxings, that's all I did was new decks unboxings, that's the only content I created, unfollow me if you're on a depth here, because that will fill your cup, that will help nourish your goals. So if it's important to kind of get clear about what you're wanting to get out of the platform, and then be ruthless about curating your content to what supports you. Because at the end of the day, it's not about the creator whose content you're watching. It's about what you, the watcher, are getting out of that content. Let's look at Facebook. Same thing. If I'm on Facebook to connect to family, then why would I accept friend requests from anybody who sent me one? I might not. If I'm on Facebook to connect only with my closest in-person friends, people I've met in real life and I spend time with in real life, then I'm gonna say no to all the friend requests from people who don't know me in real life because that doesn't support that particular goal. Another really good example for how I personally curate my social media content around my goals is I live a very conscious body positive lifestyle. And that means that even if a family member is posting a whole lot of diet and weight loss stuff, if I don't unfriend them, I very likely have unfollowed them so that I'm not constantly getting that stuff in my Facebook feed. One of the beautiful things about social media is that we have so much control over what we consume if we take that control into our own hands, but that really requires you to be mindful and present with what you're wanting to get out of that experience and come away from that sort of mindless consume social media kind of place and instead step back and go, whoa, is this filling my cup? And if it's not, how can I change the content I'm consuming, who I'm following, who I'm subscribed to, who I'm interacting with, or what type of content I'm paying attention to so that I can create that nourishing experience. And now I feel like I'm getting repetitive, so we're gonna move on to the next point. So the next point is about obligation and social media. You guys, this is such a tough one and I have so much to say. Let me just get a sip of my Coke. Okay. Obligation in social media is such a slippery slope. So I'm gonna hit you with some truth bombs that may make me sound like a jerk, but please keep in mind that I'm passionate about the topic of self-care. I think it is one of the most important things you can do day to day to nourish yourself, to look after yourself. I think that is so critically important, and we don't societally place a lot of importance on taking care of ourselves. So for me, when it comes to obligation, if somebody follows me on Instagram, as an example, and I know this is gonna make me sound like a jerk, I don't automatically follow them back. First, I look at how busy my Instagram feed is, and I should caveat all of this to say Instagram is probably currently my least active social media platform. I have a Twitter account, I don't even use it. So probably Twitter's at the bottom of the list, then Instagram, then Facebook, then YouTube, I guess. But for me on Instagram, I use it to keep track of spreads that I pull. I use it to randomly browse and look at pretty pictures of tarot and other people's tarot spreads. I sometimes use it to follow deck creators that I care about or whose work I really appreciate, or art or friends, but it's not really a platform I engage or interact with a lot. It's one that I'm starting to slowly get more comfortable with, but for now, it kind of is what it is, right? So I get tons and tons and tons of follow requests that I don't follow back, not because I don't want to follow those people or I don't care about those people, but because if my feed gets too busy, I know I'll not enjoy going on the platform. So that's a self-care decision. Every once in a while, I'll go take a peek at who's been requesting or who's been following me, and I'll see if any of them make sense with my feed, and I might follow them back. But for me, it's not personal. It's just, does this fill my cup? Sometimes it's just about not having the time to go through and weed out the stuff I'm not enjoying and add the stuff I do enjoy, and so I just kind of leave it be. But the obligatory feeling would be, if somebody follows me, I have to follow them back. Another place that obligation shows up would be, here's a really good example, is comments. I would love to respond to every comment that I get on YouTube, but I know that if I create that sense of obligation around it, this platform will become a job and not something I'm doing just for fun. I need to keep the pressure off myself that way for me to engage with YouTube in a healthy way and also for it to feel nourishing. And sometimes that means that I'll go back through my comments on a day that I've got a lot of emotional and mental bandwidth to look at that stuff, and I'll like reply to a bunch of people all at once because I'm getting to see their comments and take them in. One thing I try not to do is respond to comments when I'm in a space where I'm just doing it to do it. If I'm responding to you, I want you to feel like I'm present for you, that I read what you said and that something about it resonated or made sense to me or made me smile or whatever, and then I'll respond. I always read all of my comments, but I don't want to do the distracted, automatically reply thing. That just doesn't feel nourishing to me, and it doesn't feel authentic to me. And let's face it, I'm here first for me. And as much as I love connecting with all of you, I need to remember that this needs to stay fun and nourishing for me to get what I need out of this platform. So it's just an example. I'm making this a lot about me, and what it really needs to be about is you. When you're thinking about your social media self-care, it's about really filtering everything through what is nourishing for you. Does it support your well-being or doesn't it? Sorry about the traffic noise. We have a very noisy car going by and it's hot, so my window's open. But here's the thing, if it nourishes you, then the answer is yes, go ahead, engage in that way. But if it doesn't, then don't. And oh my gosh, I feel like I'm getting repetitive on every single point. Let me see if I can move along. So hopefully we understand about the obligation thing. The more you feel obligated or you respond or engage from an obligatory kind of place, the less likely that is to probably be nourishing for you. So it's important to kind of check in with yourself. Are you doing this just because you feel like you should, or this is the appropriate thing to do, or because you really want to? And I think that's an important thing to think about when you're engaging in social media. So let's talk about another aspect of obligation, and this is once you say yes, you're allowed to change your mind and say no later. I think it's really important to practice the art of saying no, and that's going to be a whole topic all in itself when it gets voted on in the poll, but I think a lot of us could do better at practicing just saying no. We are allowed to say no, and sometimes we think that once we've said yes, we're a yes forever. If I'm engaging with somebody on social media, and I've been enjoying engaging with them in social media, and then all of a sudden, for whatever reason, something isn't aligned and it doesn't feel good or nourishing anymore, I don't have to keep engaging just because I was engaging before. I think that's really important. Our tastes change, our needs change. And I know that there are layers to this that involve relationships and friendships, and that's a whole other ball of wax. But when we're talking about the general engagement we do with social media, remember that you're allowed to change your mind. You can say yes now and no later. You can say no now and yes later. That's a totally cool thing to do. So I just think it's important to filter obligation and stuff out of the What am I trying to say? Filter it through what fills your cup. I'm just gonna keep saying that. We're gonna drill that message in real hard. So if you're watching this right now during the premiere and you're like, what is wrong with her? It's because I feel like I have a lot to say and it's hard to drill it down to those really pure points. But in general, try to notice where obligation is playing a factor. So let's talk about the tangible in our immediacy culture, the kind of ways we can practice tangible self-care with social media in a climate where we're expected to respond to things really quickly. So I may be dating myself here, but there was a time when we didn't email, like at all. Like email wasn't a thing, which meant that if you wanted to talk to somebody, you needed to phone them, or you needed to write them a letter, or you needed to, heaven forbid, fax them. In fact, a lot of businesses operated on a lot of faxing back and forth. Faxing was kind of like pre-email. But we're in a culture now where email is our culture. Texting has actually overtaken email, texting and Facebook messaging and things like that. Our culture seems to get faster and faster with how quickly we expect to get answers, how quickly we expect to get responses. And that's what I mean when I say an immediacy culture. We're living in a culture where everything happens right now, and even the slightest delay on our part or somebody else's can cause discomfort. And I think when it comes to social media, we can get sucked into this world where a notification comes up and we feel like we need to look at it right now. An email comes through and we need to see it right now. But we also go regularly, many times throughout the day, most of us check our email. Most of us are looking at our email all the time, or our Facebook, or our Twitter, or our YouTube, or our Instagram, and we're constantly looking for new engagements, new interactions that we need to respond to or we want to respond to. So one of the ways that you can practice tangible self-care is controlling how much of that information, how much of those nudges to respond, how many of those interactions are invading your personal space. And what I mean by that is notifications primarily. So on my phone, as an example, I don't have my phone with me. It's in the other room, quietly dying because the battery is dead. On my phone, I have turned off my email notifications, my Facebook notifications, my YouTube notifications, my Instagram notifications. I don't have any social media notifications except for Facebook Messenger for the few people that I directly communicate with, mostly Peggy, on Facebook Messenger, and Glide. And even that I'm actually considering turning off. And I think that's it. Because I know that I'm going to go manually check my Gmail pretty regularly. I'm going to manually check my Facebook, and when I have the bandwidth, I will manually check my YouTube and my Instagram and that kind of stuff. So I turned off all the notifications, and you know what? I haven't missed them. I'm not getting these constant dings all of the time. And those dings, they trigger something in us that makes us feel like we need to look at them right now. And to me, that doesn't feel nourishing. And it feels like the platforms have control over me instead of me having control over me. And for me, that was a life-changing decision that I made, I think about 2 years ago now, to just not have those notifications turned on by default. And now it's bad because in our browsers, we're often nudged to allow Facebook to pop up desktop notifications and emails to pop up notifications. And it gets to the point where it feels like you're constantly under attack by notification after notification, when the reality is, if you got none of that noise, you would probably still be responding to people pretty quickly. And the reality is, for most of us, not all of us, but for most of us in an emergency situation, we're not going to be relying on social media to get that info. Now, that's my decision. That's one of the tangible ways that I practice self-care, but there's other things you can do too. One of the people, when I put this up in my YouTube community feed to sort of ask if you guys had questions or topics you wanted me to cover, Crystal P asked about constructively, oh no, wait, let me go back. I'm gonna talk about Annie's comment first. Annie talked about managing social media without the need for a full-blown social media detox. So first of all, what does it say about our social media culture that there's such a term as a social media detox? But the reality is, I think a lot of us hit a point where we have had to step off of social media because things have gotten bad in some way. This went through, a lot of us went through periods like this during political unrest, during times when news can get overwhelming. Maybe somebody in your life is going through something and it's triggering and you want to be there for them without actually getting overwhelmed yourself. there's all kinds of reasons why we might need to take a complete break from social media or from one part of our social media. These are really healthy, nourishing things that we can do for ourselves. But if you don't want to have to get to the point where you have to step away completely, then I would recommend giving yourself permission to filter your content aggressively. For example, on Facebook, when there was a particularly difficult political climate happening, I particularly try to avoid intense political discussion. I find it really difficult for me to manage my self-care in those environments. I find the discussions get a little bit cray-cray, and I don't like it. That's why I don't invite political discussion here on my YouTube channel. I don't invite it in my Facebook group. We don't do that in these spaces because it is not something that nourishes me, and this is a space I want to nourish me because that's why I'm here. And I want to be really transparent about that. So when I went through a period like that, rather than stepping away from social media entirely, I very aggressively unfollowed anyone who was regularly posting political stuff. I took a break from the politics, not from the social media. And I was still able to engage and connect with people. And when I wanted to connect with the people who maybe are posting a lot politically, I could go to their wall manually, check on them, or I could send them a Facebook message, or I could connect with them directly in some other way. But I didn't feel like I was under attack, like my eyeballs were not under attack, if you know what I mean. So that's one thing that you can do is sort of aggressively manage what content you're following. And you can even like take a piece of paper and write down a list of all the, like, let's say it's YouTube. You can make a list of all the YouTube people you usually follow, and then you can unsubscribe from that entire list and take a break from those people if those people are talking about something that you find triggering or upsetting or just isn't nourishing to you, and they're off your feed. And then after you've had a break from those people, you can always check back in and start to resubscribe to them. And I know some of you are like, wow, you're telling people to unsubscribe, but I do that. If I need to take a break, I will unsubscribe and I can always resubscribe later. So that's something you can do if you want to avoid having to take a full out digital detox or social media detox, is just aggressively filter your content until it's a little bit more nourishing, a little bit calmer for you, a little bit more digestible for you, and then you can jump back in later. There's nothing that says you can't flip-flop. If somebody unsubscribes from me today and subscribes back to me in 2 weeks, I probably wouldn't even notice. And I love you guys. I really appreciate engaging with you guys, but I'm here first to have an enjoyable experience for me, and I fully support you doing what is right for you. So something else that came up was Crystal P was talking about constructively dealing with personal attacks in social media. So for me, a personal attack is a no-fly zone, which means that if somebody personally attacks me, and I define a personal attack when we're not having a discussion, you're just coming at me with words. If we're discussing, if we're having a conversation, that's one thing, but if you're just coming at me with name calling, or you're being judgy, or you're stepping on any of my general personal boundaries, then for me it's a very easy, I shouldn't say easy, it can be emotionally difficult, but it is a very quick decision for me to step off entirely from that person or from that engagement. Now that means most social media platforms have a block button, which means that you can prevent somebody from interacting with you who is behaving in a way that doesn't suit you, that isn't feeling good or nourishing to you. And on social media, I'm pretty quick to use those features if I'm feeling unsafe with any particular person. And I don't have to explain that or justify that to anybody. If anyone anywhere makes me feel unsafe, that's what the block button is for. So that's how I handle that. I think it's really important with social media to have those personal boundaries and to know what you will and won't tolerate in your space and in your sphere. And you get to make your own rules. That's the whole point. On my Facebook, I decide who I engage with and how much. I decide who is in that sphere and out of that sphere. I do that in every single one of my social media platforms, and I don't feel conflicted about that. I sometimes will be actually too slow to make those decisions if I'm feeling obligated or guilty or worried it might hurt somebody else's feelings. But at the end of the day, I'm here for me first, and I'm going to keep saying that because I think it's an important point. So Crystal also said that, asked a question related to sort of the digital age versus the analog, or sort of talked about, what about just stepping off of social media entirely and doing everything the old-fashioned way? And by old-fashioned, I mean connecting with friends without relying on social media, connecting with loved ones that way, scheduling events with real calendars and not only on Facebook events. And I think that if that is what nourishes you, then that's awesome and that's totally fine. I have found that it's difficult in today's climate, social media climate, to easily stay connected with people outside of social media. I do think it takes effort, work, and commitment on both people's parts. But I have a friend that we do not connect through social media at all. Our entire friendship happens in text messages and movie dates and random get-togethers. And I adore that friendship. It's special and it's unique and I appreciate it so, so much. And I have another friend who stepped completely out of social media and we don't keep in touch very well. But when we see each other, it's like it was yesterday and it still feels real and it still feels authentic. And those things still are possible. It is more work, right? I think part of what social media does is it makes us a little bit lazy in how we connect with people. And I am the first to raise my hand and be like, yep, that is definitely me, because I love the convenience of Facebook Messenger and of Glide and of YouTube and just the ways that we can, and email, right? I love those conveniences. And sometimes I miss the simplicity of it not being so convenient and also the sacredness of it not being so convenient. When people had to make more of an effort, me included, there's something about that that feels extra special in today's environment. But I'm waxing poetic about them good old days, so I'm gonna keep moving on. So the other comment that came up by Crystal was talking about politics and social media, and I did kind of address that. For me, it's a no-fly zone, and there's a whole lot of reasons why that is that I'm not gonna get into because it's a no-fly zone. But I will say that you kind of have to determine for yourself what you wanna get. And there are plenty of people out in the world that come to social media to traffic, I'm sorry. That was a very noisy car again. But there are a lot of people that come to social media specifically to get their news, to talk politics, to have debates, to be activists. There's a lot of us that, I shouldn't say us, there's a lot of people that engage with social media in precisely that way, and it can be a powerful way to affect change in the world. It is not my way, and that's okay. And it might be your way or it might not be your way. I think it's important to just be clear about what it is you want out of your engagement with social media and to filter everything you do through that filter. Filter it through your filter. But do you know what I mean? Like, filter it through what you want to get out of it. And I know this has been a very babbly video and I'm sorry, but I'm going off of paper notes because I had digital issues. So there you go. Okay. That is enough of me babbling about all the different ways that I practice social media self-care and how you can. Let me give you a few journal prompts and then I'm going to give you a challenge and we're going to do an oracle card reading. Our oracle, why is that so hard to say? Our oracle card reading is going to be with the Meditations from the Light deck. This is Messages from the Light meditation deck by US Games. And the artwork looks a little bit like this. You guys will have seen this on my channel before. So let me give you your journal prompts if you are into journaling, and then I'll discuss our challenge. So here's some journal prompts to consider if you're wanting to get clearer about how you engage with social media and practice self-care. Number one, what social media services do you truly enjoy and really get joy out of, and why? And literally write about that. Number two, how can you address the obligatory ways that you engage on social media? And number three, how can you reduce your dependence on social media? And I think that one's an important one to explore because sometimes I think we think it's the only way we can get nourished with social interaction is through social media. And I think there's other ways, so it might be a good thing to explore. So this week's challenge is to pick just one, please don't overwhelm yourself, one social media platform that you already engage on. And for this week, just pay attention to how, and more, I'm reading off my notes by the way, to how, and more importantly, to why you are engaging. So every time you go to comment or like something or interact or respond to something, just pause for a second and ask yourself why you're engaging or how you're engaging. and bring that level of mindfulness into your social media engagement just on that one platform. Like, be as mindless as you want on any other ones, but on one platform, just bring that mindfulness to the table and see how you feel at the end of the week. So with that, I just drew our card, and it is the surrender card. Okay, I'm just gonna read our message and give you a little reading here. So the surrender card is really interesting in this particular context. Here's what the little booklet has to say. There are times along the path when we are driven to our knees. We think the world is against us, that the path itself has risen up as an obstruction, but perhaps it is we who are against the path that the higher self has chosen for us. Before proceeding, surrender to things as they are and breathe. This too shall pass. There's a really important message in this card for us about accepting that there are things we can control and there are things that we can't control. And when it comes to how we engage in social media and how we take care of ourselves, all we can do is notice what's happening around us on those platforms and how it's making us feel, and recognize that we can only control ourselves. We can only control how we engage with that particular platform or in that particular platform. And if we need to take a step back, or if we need to nourish ourselves in a different way, to just allow that to be an option. I think sometimes we just feel like we can't, or that there's something horrible that will happen, or that we'll miss something super important. And this card is here to just tell us that we can, and we should. So remember to take good care of yourself, both on and offline. Thank you so much for joining me for this chat. Remember always to repeat to yourself as often as possible, I am worthy and I am unafraid. If you're hanging around for the live chat, I will be seeing you shortly. If you're watching this later, please feel free to comment or engage down below any way that you would like. You can talk about your experiences with social media or self-care. You can share insights that might help other people. You can do your journal work privately, talk about the stuff on the Supportive Tarot Facebook group, or any other way that makes sense for you. Remember to just do what resonates and feels authentic and awesome. You're worth it, and I will talk to you all again very soon.